Hi, thanks for joining me on this brief review of common types of research literature that you'll find in biomedical life sciences journals. We're going to cover three types today. We've talked about primary research manuscripts in the past. That's where scientists present data and their interpretations. We'll also talk today about review papers and about this other category that I've listed as opinions / policy / letters to the editor / perspectives. Other types of journal articles you might come across that don't count as primary research manuscripts. So again, research manuscripts we've already taken a look at in some previous videos. Primary means it's the first report or the original report of some new research data. Okay. The research part of primary research manuscript means that there is data in them. They're typically written, although not always, in the IMRAD structure: introduction, methods, results, and discussion. And research manuscripts, if it's a research manuscript, you should find a methods or materials and methods section in the paper. That's primarily how you know that it's a primary research manuscript, because the authors have to explain how they did what they did to collect the new data that they're sharing as primary research. Then journals also occasionally publish review articles, which will have a citation that probably looks like their primary research articles, but they're not, because they don't contain new data. They will contain figures usually. They will contain figures and tables possibly that look at first glance like they are data, and they do represent data, but these are not data that the authors of the review article collected themselves. What these authors are doing is they've read past research articles and they're summarizing it and often providing more context and background to help people that are maybe outside of this particular field learn quickly about the field and come up to speed quickly on what's happened in the past. These are great articles for newcomers to any sort of scientific field. I often read review articles before I start looking at primary research articles. But you do have to be careful, because sometimes you need to cite the primary research article, not the review paper. So it's important to be able to distinguish primary research article from reviews. The main difference, well, often first, they will say review clearly on the first page if it's a review article. And also, you typically won't find a methods section in a review article because the authors didn't do any experimentation. They've just collected data that others have published previously, and they're maybe synthesizing it in a new way and providing some historical context. Now, the other types of publications that appear in scientific journals are less likely to be used by practicing scientists, although they are important to read. So you can have scientists write in with a letter to the editor or an opinion or a policy that's a short statement about what they think scientists should do next, or how they think that representatives to legislative bodies should vote, those sorts of things. Right? Those also do not contain data typically. Those are just the opinions of scientists that the journal thought were valid enough to and valuable enough to publish so that lots of people can read them. And then there's this category called perspectives, which is called different things by different journals. You can sort of think about them as book reviews or movie reviews, in the sense that perspectives, or sometimes called news and views articles, again, depending on which journal you're looking at, sometimes called primers. Scientists read literature that has just been published, and they provide their own interpretation, summary, and reflection on that research article that somebody else wrote and often published in a different journal. So aside from review articles, I often find reading perspectives articles, if you can find them, short reviews of primary literature written by other scientists in the same field, can also be really useful to understand what was the main point of the research article, which sometimes can be very densely written and may be hard to understand. These perspective articles hopefully clear that up. It's written a little bit more succinctly and often more clearly because it's meant for a broader audience. So let's take a look at a primary literature article and then some other types of articles, just a couple more. So here is a primary research article from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences journal. We see at the top here, it says it's a research article. And it's got an abstract, and it's got results. There are some results. It has a materials and methods section if we scroll farther down. So this is primary research literature. It's the group of scientists creating new knowledge through experimentation. But maybe we don't know, we're new to the field of biparental inheritance of mitochondrial DNA in humans, and we want something that's more accessible to us as newcomers to the field. Here is a news and views, and that's Nature's term for these sort of review articles, but reviews about one specific article. It's like a press release almost. Another scientist, or in this case, a pair of scientists, Thomas and Anu, have written a review basically of the primary literature paper we were just looking at. Notice that this is published in the journal Nature. So again, you might see this article and think, oh, the title is Mitochondrial DNA Can Be Inherited from Fathers, Not Just Mothers, and it's published in Nature. So maybe this is a primary research article, but it's not. This is a evaluation of, again, here's that citation, Writing and Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and there's a link to the article we just looked at, this one, Luo et al., right? These authors have reviewed, they've read that paper, and now they're writing their interpretation of that paper. So this is definitely not primary research, but it has figures. This is just a broadly written perspective, opinion, interpretation of the importance of that primary research literature and what it means. So again, these can be really useful to read as entry points to reading primary literature. If you can find a perspective, news and views, whatever your particular journal calls it, on the topic, the research paper that you are set to read. Most research papers don't have these sorts of articles written about them, but sometimes you can find press releases that universities put out about publications from their universities and things like that. Just take all of these news and views, perspectives, opinion articles with a grain of salt, right? With some healthy skepticism, because they are written by people and people have agendas. So don't take these at face value, because these are opinion pieces. This is not primary literature. And also, we have the review articles. So I mentioned that review articles may look like research articles. Here's one from the Biochemistry Journal. We've got a list of authors. We've got a title. We've got an abstract. We've got an introduction. There are figures, look-like data. We've got pathway diagrams. We've got a table with lots of information. This is a review article, though. There is no materials and methods section. If I keep scrolling down, there is no materials and methods section. All of these data, for example, this is a list of, and by the way, you can sort of tell this is a review because it says summary of the current literature on. Here are some genes that are involved in this process called autophagy. Note that for each one of these genes, there's this column, impact on mitochondrial function. It has a brief summary of what the impact of this gene on mitochondrial function is. And then there's this number in brackets, which is the citation to the primary research that proved that ULK1 knockout results in decreased mitochondrial clearance. So if you were using this to learn about autophagy of mitochondria, destruction of mitochondria, you would not want to use this review paper as your citation for the concept that ULK1 knockout results in decreased mitochondrial clearance, because these authors didn't create that information. It's the authors of reference 27, and you should go read reference 27. You should go get that manuscript and read it and cite that as the source of that knowledge. So again, review papers are useful for getting up to speed quickly on the state of a field, on what research has been done in the past. But note, again, I mentioned earlier, review article is very clearly written at the top of this paper. If it's a review, it will typically say it in the header of the first page. Be careful. These are great for learning about science quickly, but you should always follow the citations in the review article to the primary research literature and read those as the basis for your written work, be it abstracts, lab reports, scientific manuscripts, grant proposals, and so forth.